All right, team, bring it in. We got to get this strategy down for our upcoming game. We got a new team member that's on board today, Joe Shambaum, coming over from Westview University. He's our new running back. And so, Joe, I hope you watched film before coming to our team meeting today. There's a lot of huddle highlights that I needed you to take a look at and get acclimated to our playbook and our strategies for the upcoming game. Jill is our quarterback. She's going to be leading us in this game, this upcoming game against our arch rivals. And so, Joe, there may be a time where Jill will hand it off to you and help us go in and score to win the game.
Absolutely, Coach, and thanks for having me. And Jill, and we're the 1-2 punch. I know we're gonna make it work. Don't worry.
Joe, I'm so excited to hand you the ball. I can't wait to work with you here, and I'm really excited about beating our arch rivals today.
So, Coach, what tape did you want me to watch? Like, what was there? Was there something specific?
I just want you to get acclimated on the defensive alignments that you're going to be going up against as we, run the ball down the field and the different game plans that we have strategized against our arch rivals.
So defensive tape. Well, we never really watched too much defensive tape at the last place. I mean, is it really needed?
You guys didn't watch defensive tape?
You know what, Coach? I got this. You can count on me to take Joe under my wing, and I'll explain to him how things are done here. I know it's going to be a transition for him, but I can take him under my wing, Coach.
Sounds good.
Well, that'll be fun. But so Jill, tell me some of your strategy. Like, are you more of a pass off right or left? Like, do you the halfback passes? Like, what kind of strategy do you use?
Well, it all depends on the situation, Joe. So here at our school, right, we gotta look down the field. We gotta read the other players. We gotta really, dial into what's happening. So it's all situational here. So, I don't know where you're coming from. It sounds like you did things quite differently there, but don't worry, you're gonna get the hang of things here, and we're gonna make sure that you do.
Okay. I mean, Coach, is there a running back coach that I should go talk to as well, or is it just you?
I coach the running backs as well, so I'll be in your positional meeting so we can go over our strategy for the upcoming game. Yeah.
Sweet. And then, do I get to play special teams as well, or am I just doing running back? And do I have a fullback? What's going on?
Take it easy, Joe. We got to get you on board to learn the playbook, and then we'll get you on special teams.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I mean,
yeah, Coach, he doesn't understand. You got to prove yourself here, right? You got to prove yourself first, and
absolutely.
Hey, I got high goals and high expectation, guys, and I've heard nothing but the best from everyone else about you guys and this whole team. And sign me up, and I'm ready to go.
Glad to have your board. I love that energy that you're bringing.
Now we just got to back it up with some results, Joe, because we really want to win this game. You hear me? We got you.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. Welcome to the Talent Revolution, Tales from the Trenches. I'm Jill Caniglio-Kirk.
And I'm Joe Shambaum. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our little scenario, and we have a great special guest with us with some great analogies. Hopefully you've figured out a little bit from that on what our topic is, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's really about integration, assimilating, and really that integration piece into organizations. So without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest, Nate McCray. Nate has 20 years in talent acquisition, started his career in the Navy, worked through a variety of different corporate roles in talent acquisition, and then most recently, high school and Division II football coach. And I'm really excited to have you here, Nate. Welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Nate, give us a couple minutes of your background and kind of introduce yourself a little bit more if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 27 years of talent acquisition / recruitment experience. It started when I was in the Navy. My last duty station, I did Navy recruiting, and then I transitioned over into corporate recruiting. And so worked my way up from working at agencies, running my own desk, to transitioning over to the corporate side of things. Worked in a lot of different industries: automotive, software development, nonprofit, startups for cloud tech companies, and just worked my way up the corporate ladder, and currently pursuing my next opportunity.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned something, Jill, we might need to do this topic, but military or recruiting is not easy from what I'm told. So that could be a whole nother episode that we need to think of.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that you've got some tales from the trenches too, with your military background and being a veteran of the TA function for your tenure. I'm sure you've got some stories, and hopefully we'll get into those in a little while here. But we're so excited to have you with us. And we'd love to hear a little bit about your successes, and I think some of your lessons learned on the job as you kind of look at how do you successfully integrate new team members, right? And how do you set up your organization for success and really introduce people in a way where they hit the ground running and they're able to contribute to the business.
Yeah, so give us that top line, Nate, that whole philosophy piece, right, from the corporate and the sports piece, and then we can dive into the little specifics, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I think assimilation plans are very important for new employees that are coming into the organization because it gets them aligned with the corporate vision and goals. It also helps the new employee get a definition of what their role will be, the expectations that they'll be held to, and the accountability of their actual position. So I think it's very important for that individual to come in and understand the lay of the land, get to meet the different stakeholders, understand what the new training development piece will be for them. And I think that is very key for a new employee that's coming into an organization.
So how did you see that similar or different in the football world?
I think it's very similar. As a coach, when I have new recruits coming in that are coming in as freshman football players, I have an assimilation plan for them. For example, when I was in Wisconsin at the D3 school, Carthage College, and I coached the running backs coach, I had an assimilation plan for my incoming running backs. And that plan was to understand how they watch film when they're watching the opponents and themselves. But also if they know what to look for after coming out of the huddle and they survey the opposing team's defense right before we start to snap the ball. They have to very quickly look and scan that defensive alignment to understand what the predictability will be for them when they're getting the ball and which hole to hit and which direction to go in. And so how to leverage that. And so, having that football IQ, being able to think quickly on your feet, make adjustments when you're thrown a curveball or hit an obstacle, but continue moving on with the mission and gaining yardage and possibly a touchdown. So there's a big assimilation plan that's put together for my incoming running backs.
So that's the technical aspect of it. What about the culture piece? Because, there's a huge culture in a football team, same with the company cultures. How were you able to, was there any culture assimilation or integration?
Definitely. So from an assimilation standpoint regarding culture, I have to have a football player that has good grades. And so GPA is big for me. And, if the kid's not getting a good GPA, then he's not going to be available during the season because he may be ineligible. So if grades are a concern, it's something that I would probably back off of. And so GPAs are key for me. Are they a good community person? How do they treat their family members and their parents, their brothers and sisters? How do they act in school, outside of the classroom, when they're with their friends, what they're posting on social media? All those things I take a look at when I'm looking at players to recruit for my positional group.
Sounds familiar when recruiting recruiters.
Not a lot different, right? Just maybe looking at a few different pieces, but so many similarities.
Very much so.
Like way back when we originally did it, for everyone to know, Nate and I have worked together a couple times, and one of the organizations we integrated a 90-day kind of integration plan, right? And we did it, we bucketed in by 30, 60, and 90 specific areas, and every company has done it differently. And Jill, I'm sure you've done something similar at other companies, maybe not called it assimilation, but I'm just thinking other companies would want to do this differently, right? What other ideas or thoughts?
How do you break it down into smaller components, right? So if we were to try to take this big assimilation and look at 90 days, maybe where do you start in kind of identifying what the key areas of breaking it down into are? What are the key components? Is that kind of your question, Joe?
If we go into corporate and just business world, what kind of buckets would people think you would suggest, right? And I think this aligns to small, medium, and large companies, profit,
Right.
nonprofit, et cetera. Just ideas so people could think of, what's that starting point that they kind of want to, they got a blank sheet of paper. What do I do, right?
Yeah.
And depending on the size of the organization, you can start at the 90-day simulation plan, and it could be organized to the point of where who they're going to meet with within the organization cross-functionally, whether it be engineering, manufacturing, sales, marketing, purchasing, and so on, program management or what have you, and then those stakeholders that they're meeting with. Is it in the same building or is it in a different city or state or country? And so that plan is put together, and maybe 90 days is a little aggressive. Maybe it needs to be stretched out a little bit more, because if your organization is pretty big and they have to go to different countries, then they have to travel, right? And so just being able to visit different divisions and departments and to understand the lay of the land of that specific division or business unit, maybe take get some training on the type of products that they're dealing with, and then the trainings that they'll have to attend. It just really depends on the size of the organization and the structure of that assimilation plan.
Yeah. Nate, one thing I heard you say early on in this conversation that I think is really important to point out is that people coming in really need to understand the big picture and the overarching business objectives, right? I think sometimes departments are so eager to get that resource on board. Maybe it's been a long recruitment process. They just really want to kind of throw that person into the mix and, kind of get them working. And I personally feel like, you're flying blind if you really understand that business context and really what the organizational needs are, what the overall mission is. I don't know how you see that, but I feel like that's a really fundamental part for me, where sometimes we skip that part. I think it's really important to kind of give that context. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really feel like you're doing that new hire a disservice by skipping parts of that whole assimilation into the organization. And so I think that, that person needs to understand the mission of the organization, what type of expectations are ahead of them, KPIs and performance metrics and deliverables that they're going to have to deliver in their day-to-day job functions. And so I'm not a fan of rushing that part of the process. I think it's actually setting that person up for failure if you do that. And so I think it's very important to stick to the assimilation plan step by step and not skip any steps of the process.
Yeah, and I think, it definitely takes discipline. That's one word that comes to mind, that organizations that have discipline in putting programs like this together and following them, I think have a greater odds of really having a team member that after 90 days can really hit the ground running and really start moving the needle, right? Start having those aha moments where they're connecting all those dots, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's the elephant in the room, guys. And how do we, and who's got ideas for this? How do you stick to it? Because we all, like you just said, Jill, you got a new hire and it's like, boom, put them in there. And then everybody's drinking from the fire hose and there's these situations and events and things going on. And the plan goes to the side. How do we get it to stick? Any thoughts and ideas around that, Nate? I mean, you want to start with, what have you seen that's worked to stick to the plan?
Yeah, you have to not be afraid to continue to drive the process. We as, folks in TA, we own this process and we're driving it from start to finish. So when we get to the onboarding and assimilation of a new employee, I think we just need to stay on path and stay on course and not be afraid to say, hey, we can't skip steps in this process. You're going to be doing a disservice to the new employee. We want to create a great experience for that person. So we need to stay on course and, ensure that this person has their equipment, ensure that this person understands what trainings that they're going to have to attend when they get on board within the organization. And that person needs to also understand who they're going to report to, the people that they may intersect with, different maybe, product lines and services or what have you. And so if they're not getting onboarded the proper way, it's just really doing them a disservice. So we got to stick to our, I hate to say guns, but stick to the script and ensure that we're not afraid to tell the leaders, hey, we want the same thing that you want. We want this talent to come on board, but we got to stick to our process because the process is very important.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind for me as I heard you talking about that, Nate, is maybe it's an old saying, but what gets measured gets done. So I think having something that's actually kind of a script and that there's milestone meetings to review, if there's a measurement, somehow people place different importance on that, right? So
Absolutely.
I think if you kind of schedule it and you have something that measures it, you have you have better odds of actually achieving it. The age old, maybe a little dated, right? But sometimes some of those old sayings come true, right? What gets measured gets done, and putting that discipline. Yeah.
I mean, because that's a great KPI, right? How well did we achieve our assimilation? It should be 100%. Did we achieve it? And so I'm going to add in the suggestion, sign off on it, right? In maybe old school of paper, but handing somebody the paper or DocuSign now and whatever else you want to do, but create that document and make it live and real that the manager and the employee has to sign off on, and then therefore it's a KPI to be able to showcase back to leadership that you did this. It helps drive the quality of hire metric that everybody wants to track as well. I think that's another piece of the pie to be able to drive to stay on track, right?
Right.
At least that's my suggestions on it.
Good point.
Yep.
So you brought up another point here, Nate, that I want to talk about is who owns it. You said TA owns it. I'm not saying HR owns it or the manager. I think all three, to be honest. If Joe's opinion,
I would argue the employee should own this plan and they're accountable to make sure that it gets done. I think the organization has the responsibility for putting the plan together, or the leader. But at the end of the day, I would agree that there's shared ownership in it. We all have a stake in it, right?
And you're right.
And every person that has a responsibility to meet with that individual and go through certain elements has ownership in that individual's success. But the way I see it, the employee could drive this, right? If you have the right talent coming in and you're encouraging the right behaviors and saying, hey, this is mission critical for you. This is your number one responsibility your first 90 days. And I want you to be aggressive about making sure this happens. I think that sets the process up for success, because it's hard for other people in the organization to ignore an enthusiastic employee that's asking for their time and wanting to sit down with them and other things, right? So that's just my personal view of one way of potentially encouraging success.
One thing that I'm thinking of is like who owns it from our side of the fence. And our side, I mean HR, TA, maybe possibly
functionally.
Yeah. Like who's going to drive it internally within the organization to say, hey, who's going to take ownership of putting it together? And then if you need somebody to sign off on it, you get these C-suite members that are just so busy, they don't sign off on it, and you're chasing them down to get the signature for it. So there's just so many different things, like who would own it and drive it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the development of it is a co-ownership of TA and HR, right? I mean, we know so much on the TA side and HR knows so much on their side. And because we know so much of the business, it's a great partnership with the HR business partners, the talent management. Again, it could just be the generalist or the manager, depending the size of the organization, but we co-own it to be able to help drive and establish it. But I do like your point, Jill, that the employee owns a big portion of it. Shouldn't be, well, my manager didn't let me do this. It should be, no, I need to drive this. I want to be integrated and connected. So I feel I don't want to go look for another role, right? And it shouldn't just be a metric or a KPI on a dashboard. It should be that should be a proud moment of, listen, if we really did these assimilation and integration plans appropriately, our quality of hire goes up, our attractiveness goes up, it gets known, people want to come here because of how integrated both technically and culturally you get inside of that organization. So there's a lot of intrinsic value I think you see out of it. And I think there's, we rush to hire people so fast and then throw them into the mix, and it gets lost. And I think this is a huge topic that I think needs more attention.
I would ask the question, there's probably someone out there listening saying, you know what, I have no idea. I'm not exactly sure what all you're all talking about. You guys must work for big fancy companies with all these COEs, and I'm just me, and I wear so many hats. Like, where do I get started here? And how do I drive this if I'm the solo HR person, right? And I don't have the right resources. I'm sure you've been through this process before. Can you give somebody advice in that situation and the best way to approach this?
Yeah, the best way to approach it is just you got to have dialogue. If you're a one-person show, then you got to have dialogue cross-functionally to understand how this should flow, or if you're putting it together, how it should flow or how it should look on paper. This may start off as just brainstorming on paper when you first put it on, writing it down, and then you're going to structure it the way it makes sense as you start having conversation cross-functionally to understand, depending on who you're hiring, how the flow will operate.
Yeah, would you kind of say, like, if I'm trying to think of an analogy here, but it's really the building blocks, right? What are the building blocks and the foundational knowledge an individual would need in order to be successful when they come up to speed in this company, right? Would that be a good analogy?
That would be a great analogy, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you take the steps at it, think of it as, okay, what do we need for them to start legally, right? What's all the paperwork?
Yeah,
and then
it's an extension of your orientation, basically.
It is.
But then it's really kind of taking the specifics of their role, right? Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then you're building it out, and how you start off with one, and then you build from there, right? Because then, we typically, and I see in a lot of smaller, every size company, well, the first day is usually planned, right? Some orientation and integration and meetings, and maybe they take them to lunch. And then maybe the first week gets planned, we're going to schedule several meetings, but take it further from there, right? What else, like you said, and you could start small with that, right? What's the first month look like? And then build it out further. Think of it this way. What are the tools, systems, and processes that these folks need to be successful? And if you break it down that way, and then you can slowly build it out by function and disciplines within your organizations.
Right. I would go one step further. I think that's a great starting point. I would say, in addition to what are the tools and processes, why are they important to the business, right? And kind of marrying it with that contextual information, right? Why is this critical here? What is this result in as we bring this person on board, if it's a recruiting thing, right? Just kind of the why. So it's a bit of the infrastructure framework, but it's also the how these people come to play together in the organization, right? And breathing life into it, right? Rather than it being policies and other things, kind of these are how these people come together and how the company works in order to deliver a product or a service, right? This is how we make money, right? So you're kind of layering in those other aspects of it as well. So it's not just this mechanical, methodical, step-by-step thing, right? So that's kind of.
So all of those things that I kind of mentioned in my mind, those are all conversation starters, right? So it's a piece of paper or a document or a file, whatever you want to call it, is, okay, what is XYZ tool? Someone has to explain that to them, right? It's not go on.
And this is why we use it, and this is how it's used, and this is how we do XYZ with it, right? So, yeah. Because I think some companies fall flat in the world of saying, here's a book, or here's a handbook, or this explains this tool, but it's missing all of that context and all of the important things that it takes you a long time to figure out on your own.
Well,
right?
I mean, I'm going to go back to our initial piece, right? Here's a tape of the football game. Go watch it without the context or, hey, another coach or person pointing out different things. I'm going to say it's what 20% useful,
right? Yeah, you need that roadmap, right? That's what you were talking about, Nate. You're training the person and telling them what they're watching for and why it's
Absolutely.
going to be important, and then what they're expected to do with that information ahead of them watching it, right?
Absolutely.
So otherwise, like Joe said, you're just watching something going, I have no idea why I'm watching this, right? And then you've kind of lost the opportunity. So I think that definitely was a great analogy to highlight what we're talking about here.
I'm going to throw out another question to us all
Mhm.
because it's just a hot topic for everything. Do we see AI and automation playing into an assimilation world or integration, whatever you want to call this type of program?
I could see that taking place, especially when you're trying to put it together and structure it. I could see companies using AI for that portion of it. So I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would even think for certain companies that are taking this approach of using AI to maybe build videos and build libraries, right, and do things on a larger scale, I think there's potentially applications there as well, where I don't think it replaces the opportunity for two-way dialogue. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. It's not really my model, but I could see that could be another application in larger scale companies where they're onboarding large sales staffs or certain functions, right, where they want to kind of build a learning library of some of this information.
I guess if I'm going to go big, because I like to go big or go home, um, I could see, and I think, and again, we're not sponsored by anybody, but if you take a paradox, for
But
example,
we could
of
be. No.
absolutely, wink, wink, FYI, you can message me at. But if you look at a paradox, which really is a big tool that helps people apply to jobs. I don't know if anybody's seen that if they've applied to jobs in the past. And Nate, I know you're looking right now. Have you seen that? They walk you through that piece of it. So I could see some type of AI agent being created to help you do this onboarding, and it walks you through this whole process, which then documents it and then gets you your data so you don't have to do anything manual. Again, I don't know if it's out there, but I'm sure it could be built, and probably for more well-established, long-term, bigger companies that have it and want to play into that. A small company might be difficult, right? Unless there's a plug and play. But I could see something, because it has to be updated. But you build it, it's probably going to stay 85-90% of the same things, unless there's a big overhaul of a culture change, or obviously updated goals every year and things like that. But I could see it. I could see that being leveraged.
I could see it being leveraged, but my concern would be we're taking away the human side of a very important key piece of the process. So at what cost are these companies going to implement something like this? I don't like it personally because so many things can happen and go wrong. So I wouldn't be a fan of it.
Yeah, I would also say the context of the business is constantly changing. So I really don't know how you could really anticipate all of those things and how it really could do the same level of work that a human could, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's certain aspects to leveraging it, like maybe getting started on a framework, right? Those kinds of things. But I do think that organizational knowledge, that cultural piece, those aspects that are kind of that tribal knowledge that's so important. I think those unwritten rules that no employee handbook tells you, but those are the like secret rules to survival in an organization. Those
Yeah.
have to come from the actual people in the organization, right?
Very
So,
true.
yeah.
So, we talked about one measurement, which was like a quality of hire side of things. But truly, I don't know if there is like any ideas on how do we know that this person is up to speed? We got them up to speed maybe faster, right? They're fully utilized and useful and in the grain of things, and whatever that, if we can get them 90 days, 6 months, like what other kind of metric or that thing to know that, hey, this worked. Any thoughts around showcasing how it could be done besides like I said, that quality of hire metric?
Well, I would say that from the last organization I worked at, I had my recruiters do 30, 60, 90-day check-ins with the new hires. And so, and beyond, just to check in after that point as well. But to just have a conversation with the new hire to understand how the experience has been since day one to day 90. Is there any concerns that they may have regarding their current role, their responsibilities that they were told that they would have during the process of interviewing for the role? Have they, started all their trainings, or did they even go to training yet? Because there's been some scenarios where people start and they haven't attended training because they're so swamped with their day-to-day work functions, they can't get the training done. And so just gathering data and information on how that whole transition went from day one to the day 30 to day 60 or day 90. And so just collecting that data and then coming back as a team to discuss it and see how we can improve moving forward.
Jill, I mean, you've onboarded how many hundreds of people in your career? How do you know when they're integrated effectively?
Yeah, I would say I think we all learn as HR professionals who our leaders to watch are and who the ones that maybe we don't need to coach and follow up with as much. I hate to say that, but some leaders need a little more special attention and care with helping their team members get onboarded. So I would just say that's a tip I have in saying spend your time on the people need the help. If your time is limited, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have the check-ins with everyone by all means. But I definitely learned over my course of my career, there were certain areas I really needed to focus on. I think there's telltale signs if you look at trends and you look at turnover in certain areas or key parts of the organization, right? So if we look broadly at the organization, I would have a roadmap of where do I really want to make sure I'm diving deep, right? And talking to every person maybe versus a representative sample. So those are just some tips I have into saying, I think those conversations with people, just checking in with them. How are things going? What feedback do you have? We're looking to improve our process. I think I've gotten some actually really good feedback from employees where not everybody's really on the same timeline, right? Depending on what they're doing and what's happening in an organization. I've gone through hiring people when there's a reorg happening and things are somehow working a little bit more slowly during that time, right? So I think we have to realize as much as you plan things, there's no optimal time. You also have to use your common sense as to not being so rigid and stuck to a plan and the timing of it. You need to do things when it makes sense, right? So there might be organizational needs to kind of prioritize one thing over another or pull some things ahead or to push some things out, right? I don't know if that makes sense to all of you, but those are some things I've seen in my career that I think are real worlds that have come to play.
So your guys' opinion on this is the integration or assimilation, and I'm using different words so everybody uses it themselves, different for individual contributors, management, and executives?
Absolutely.
And, okay, so then how and why?
I think that there are certain steps within that assimilation plan that'll be the same for all those folks. And then there are some that are going to be different, especially when you start talking about executives or SOT members or C-suite members. That assimilation plan is going to be a little bit different than, the individual contributor per se, or the first line hiring manager, or a first line manager per se. It's just going to be structured a little bit different than an executive's assimilation plan, just depending on the role and, the things that need to be put on there as far as, cross-functionally, business, products, things of that nature.
Well, I imagine some nervous HR person out there right now saying, what did he just say? I only have one. Now what? And for that person, I would say you probably have one for an individual contributor because you're probably hiring many more of those. And my advice to you would be to take that plan and look at the most recent executive you hired and sit down with them and maybe interview them, right? And talk about things that they wish they knew up front that they learned later, right? And just do a little bit of a debrief with them to kind of help build that. But I would say overall, I've seen in organizations that part maybe is overlooked a little bit because those jobs generally aren't turning over as quickly. They're
Right.
fewer and farther between. And I don't know that every organization, without COEs and other functions have invested as much time in that. So as I heard you say that, I've been in that nervous position myself and use some of those strategies to help put those type of plans together to make sure the executive coming in is integrated well. So
Yeah, and I think fundamentally it's the similar plan. There's just different levels of conversation, deeper aspects of things, right? Whether it's financial or
yeah,
management aspects of it, business plans.
like what level of sign up is needed for certain
Right.
expenditures? How do we
Yeah.
budget things here, right? There's certain things that come to play for those jobs that other individual contributors aren't going to see or work with. So
But I think everybody needs the same amount of follow-up touch points and partnership with it, right? Whether it's their hiring leader as well, plus the HR or TA person in conjunction to it. And that's what I was hoping everyone was on the same page. It's fundamentally, it's the same aspects change, but just because they're an executive doesn't mean that they get that extra different treatment into these things, right?
right.
On that side of it. Okay. We touched on a few stories. Who's got a story that they want to share? You're laughing, Nate. What's going on? What's in your head?
I have to think about this. Somebody else go first.
Has to be G rated, Nate. We're rated G.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think fundamentally, this, for me, assimilation started with the business problem of how do we speed up the integration and effectiveness of new employees. And that's when I started a project years ago and it started with a core discipline and then it spread across. And that's the fundamental aspects of how I know these things. And then I've taken it to other organizations and it's morphed, right? It was bigger or a little bit less. And some companies took it on. Some said, well, we kind of do things a little differently and we adjust to it. And, there isn't a specific story of a success or failure into these things because I think it's all walking through and doing it, but I think at least having it was the big success that I have, right? And integrating that in there and ensuring putting things into place. I guess the biggest story and takeaway I would say was the mentor, right? Incorporating a mentor to the new hires, and it didn't matter the level, was a big piece. And in my mind, the mentor is not the hiring leader. So it gives them somebody else to talk to ask questions that isn't their boss, right? And that's
Probably a
not
peer,
necessarily
right?
the recruiter. A peer, someone else. So therefore they could help, usually inside of that group, because then they're dealing with the similar things and they could say, hey, what's this system for, right? Or, hey, how do I do this really quickly? That was a big takeaway that I had, and we integrated that in one other organization, and it sped up that onboarding even faster.
Yeah, I think the other thing you find with programs like that, there's some people that really like to volunteer and be involved in those things, and it really helps them be more connected to the business. I think if you can get peers buy-in and advocacy for other new hire success, that's a huge win. It's just another reason to do it. Then you have kind of everybody kind of pulling for one another, wanting to support one another. It builds collaboration, right? There's so many reasons that those programs make a lot of sense.
But there's also a lot of people that don't want to do that too, and you just gotta. So it's a great way to push somebody, but also ultimately if they don't want to, and then you can't have the same person do it all the time, especially if you're hiring a lot, because they still have their day job to do, right? So
yeah, it's a balance for sure.
So I have something, and Joe and Jill, you let me know your thoughts on this. So this is actually a true story of had a CEO that wanted to onboard a C-suite member. The offer was made, offer was accepted verbally, signed as well. This was on a Tuesday, and the CEO wanted that person to start that Thursday of the same week. Now, no background check has been done yet. Equipment has not been ordered because I haven't spoken to IT yet to see if we even have a system on hand for this individual. And the reasoning behind this is because the CEO wanted this C-suite member to attend a out-of-state meeting that was going to take place for 3 to 4 days. We advised against it. This person actually went ahead and scheduled this person to fly out to the meeting anyway. But this was a sticky situation, because what if something happens to that person while they're flying to this city? What if something happens to this individual while they're taking an Uber from the hotel to the meeting site? Who's going to approve the travel cost? Because this person has not been hired yet. Is this person going to expect to be paid for this trip, regular pay, when they haven't even started yet? So there were so many things that was explained to the CEO, and this person actually just went ahead and did it anyway. So, Jill,
that's when the legal team's your friend, where you're like, hello, do you have a minute? I want to bounce this off you. Right.
Yeah.
Those are tough, right? Because at the end of the day, the higher up the direction comes from, the more difficult it is. And it's hard to challenge those things. But I'm sure in hindsight, that was a bumpy start, right? And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Can you share, did that person assimilate well in the end? But, or what negative impact it had?
I think they were just rolling with the punches. But from my viewpoint, I want the assimilation to go well into the organization. And this was a bit rocky because it's all over the place, right? Background check had to be, tried to rush it, but it still wasn't back yet. So we had to do pending the outcome of the background checks. If something comes back, we're going to have to end the employment. And so, and then just worrying about if something happens, we're at risk, right? Legally, we would be at risk.
Yeah, not to even mention that you're probably putting this other person on the spot to say, well, starting in 2 days seems abrupt. Me traveling on no notice seems to be a lot to ask, right? So even flipping the script and saying, how fair is it to put that on the new candidate? And could they really say no, even if it doesn't maybe fit what their expectations are, right?
True. Very true.
It's also a potential big culture exposure of, am I expected to do this all the time? And how does this come into it? I mean, regardless of the background check, okay, we can pen that and you have that conversation with the candidate. The person can understand that they may not have equipment, but in those cases, I'd be like, then we need to start them today because they need to be on our insurance. We need to be liable for them. We need to do those things. So then, therefore, yes, I would say, that's their start date when they start traveling, in essence. Yeah. And that's where I would have pushed it on, right? And and it's an easy conversation with the right person to, hey, listen, this is not going to work out really well in these things. We're going to work through this stuff. Because I've had that, I can't tell you how many times, hey, Joe, great. They need to start tomorrow or Monday, and it's Thursday. And I'm like, listen, they have no equipment. We have nothing set up. There's not going to work out really well. I don't care. Get them in here. we'll do our best, right, and accommodate. But it just, like you said, it starts off on a potential, unsettling, uneasy, rocky potential thing, right? And sometimes the candidates want it too because they're just ready to go. But again, nothing's ever perfect either.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other final thoughts?
No, nothing from my end. I mean, I've enjoyed this time that we spent together. It was great having this conversation with the both of you.
Yeah, for me, I really feel like in some regards, organizations have made things a little more complicated than they need to be in today's world. And that somehow this reminds me of getting back to kind of basics and using fundamentals and common sense to really ensure that you're kind of taking the right time up front. To make sure that investment you've made in this person and this responsibility that you've taken on as you have somebody leaving another job or starting a new career, right? To make sure it really gets off on the right footing and that it's a win-win situation both for the organization and employees. So I certainly enjoyed the conversation. I'm relatively new in a new role in a new company, and I keep looking at it and examining all these things. I think there's opportunities for every organization to do things better. And sometimes doing things better is doing things a little bit more simply or stripping things back a little bit, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think for everyone listening, big, small, medium-sized organizations, like we said, small steps, move through the process and think of how would you want to be treated if you were coming in? What things would you want to learn, see, understand, and partner with to be able to get acclimated as soon as possible? I'm going to go back to another analogy, Jill, from one of these others. It's like your first date, right? Like, hey, can we get everything very well and moving forward and showcased to have the right partnership and hopefully get and stay married instead of getting divorced.
Well, I feel like I might have more dates now that I've been the quarterback personally. I might be more in demand now that I finally got my dream of being the quarterback. I said my dream's either to be the quarterback or date the quarterback. So
well, now you could be both, right? So.
Now I can say I've done both. Yeah.
But thanks everyone for listening. I hope you can see the analogies that it plays into sports, it plays into business, it plays into family. How do you integrate and blend and work together with folks to be able to make it harmonious and effective for everyone. So thanks, everyone. Please comment, like, share. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we really appreciate it. So have a great day, and we'll speak with you soon.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Here. Bye.